With Alaska Weather, I'm Emily Niebuhr. It's March 31st, 2023. You can reach us at 818-555-937-4977 or online at weather.gov/Alaska or email us at nws.ar.tvweather@noaa.gov. It is Tsunami Awareness Week this week for the state of Alaska. Let's talk about some natural tsunami warning signs because sometimes there's not enough time for unofficial statement. So again, if you are near the coast and you feel a strong or a long earthquake, or if you see a sunrise or fall of the ocean, or if you hear a loud roar from the ocean, these could mean that a tsunami is coming and it's a good idea to get quickly to high ground or inland. Again, if you hear a loud roar from the ocean, if you see a sunrise or fall of the ocean level, or if you feel a strong or long earthquake when you are at the coast, please get to safety and get inland fast. So let's look at some of our hazardous weather for today. It's a fairly calm day for the state of Alaska. We don't have any official warnings, watches, or advisories, but we do have some special weather statements for interior Alaska for this weekend and also along the western coast. These are related to a low pressure system that's going to be up in the Chukchi Sea, and that's going to be moving rapidly on Saturday and bringing gusty winds and widespread snowfall first to the coast and then to interior portions such as Fairbanks. So again, nothing at advisory level, but please travel with caution if you're going in those areas this weekend for snow and blowing snow. Let's look at your Climate Prediction Center outlook for April for our temperatures. Again, we're expecting that temperatures will be above average for the Kotzebue and Nome area for the whole entire month. On average. If we go to the Anchorage area, generally we're going to be a little cooler than normal for the month of April, but generally conditions are going to be about average across much of the state for temperatures. For rain and snowfall, we're expecting that we're going to have a little wetter than normal for Kotzebue and Nome for April, and a little drier than normal for the Anchorage and Dillingham, Kodiak areas. But again, mostly average conditions for the state for April. As a result of that, most of Alaska is expecting average potential for spring river ice breakup and snow melt flooding. So we're expecting average conditions. The exceptions to this are above average potential exists for the upper Yukon River, upper Tanana River, and areas of the Copper River Basin. Below normal temperatures are expected through mid-April, so especially the start of the month is expected to be cooler than normal. So this will likely delay the onset of river breakup and snow melt. Let's take a look at your current conditions. Our most prominent low pressure system is in the Gulf of Alaska right now, near Yakutat, Sitka, and Juneau, bringing widespread rain and snow showers to the area. Meanwhile, we have this low pressure system in Siberia. It's going to be moving rapidly across the Chukchi Sea over this weekend and bringing that widespread rain and snow. Meanwhile, we have a low pressure system that's stagnant near Shemya, but you can see this broad surge of warm air and moisture associated with this system, but it's running into a ridge that's in the Bering right now. Let's take a look at your weather map. Here's our low pressure system. It's 988 millibars with a front along the panhandle and scattered snow showers in the interior. Again, here's our high pressure system that's blocking this 995 low and its associated warm air from reaching much of the Bering quite yet. As you go northward, we have a 996 millibar low that is in the Siberia region, and again, that's going to be moving rapidly. By tonight, it starts to reach part of the Bering Sea. Meanwhile, the 996 millibar low is still blocked by this ridge tonight. And the 989 millibar low in the Gulf of Alaska is fairly stagnant as well. So we're expecting widespread rain and snow showers to impact the Gulf Coast and Panhandle regions. By Saturday, that low and its front move rapidly towards the Bering Sea coast and bring widespread snow and gusty winds. And some of that warm air in that front starts to push in northwards as that ridge moves to the east. Meanwhile, in the Gulf of Alaska, we have that low pressure system. It's starting to diminish and slowly drift off to the southeast. By Sunday, again, that ridge moves into some of the Gulf or the coastal areas along the Bering Sea, and this warm air begins to push in across much of the Alaska Peninsula and bring rain and snow showers. Meanwhile, that low that was impacting the coastal areas Saturday is bringing widespread snow into interior areas by your Sunday. And a very weak low develops. It's 1,008 millibars for your Sunday. Let's take a look at the temperatures and see the impact of some of these weather systems on your temperatures. So we're going to start out with temperatures in the mid-30s for your panhandle regions on Saturday morning. Meanwhile, for the Kenai Peninsula and interior Alaska, temperatures will be fairly warm. We're looking at 15 near Golcana area. So some of that cloud cover keeping them warm for your Saturday morning. For your Saturday afternoon, temperatures are warming into the mid-30s across much of our interior areas and along the Kenai Peninsula and Anchorage areas. Meanwhile, in the Panhandle, we're looking at temperatures in the 40s. 40 in Kodiak as well. By Sunday morning, we are looking at temperatures are going to be much cooler for your Golcana area. Again, 3 degrees for your morning temperatures, but still kind of in the mid-20s for the Kenai Peninsula and Anchorage. As we look for your Juneau area, we're looking at temperatures in the low 30s in the Panhandle. By Sunday afternoon, temperatures will have warmed into the mid-40s for portions of the Panhandle and into the mid-30s for much of South Central and much of the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island areas. Let's take a look at your temperatures in the north. We're looking for temperatures still below zero for your Saturday morning under partly clear skies, and along the Arctic coast. But those temperatures are going to be warming by your Saturday afternoon hours. Meanwhile, in coastal areas with that low pressure system, temperatures will be staying in the mid-20s for your Saturday afternoon. By Sunday, again, a cool start to your Sunday morning in parts of interior north, and also cold air as that high pressure system moves in. Again, some of that cold air from Siberia, so a chilly morning in parts of the Seward Peninsula Sunday. By Sunday afternoon, again, only warming into the low teens. So a lot of that cold air coming in from Russia will be having an impact for your Sunday morning. Let's take a look at some of your Alaska Peninsula and eastern Aleutian Islands. We see temperatures are starting in the 30s for your Saturday morning, but widespread teens in your interior areas near Bristol Bay. For Saturday afternoon, temperatures are going to be warming into the 40s across much of the Aleutian Islands and into the Alaska Peninsula. As we get into your Sunday morning, again, you can see the impact of some of that cool air, cool morning temperatures in the interior. By Sunday afternoon, temperatures will warm to your 40s. Let's take a look again for your 6 to 10 day outlook. Again, we're going to be seeing a chilly few weeks coming up, especially in the Bethel area and Nome, slightly below average.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Tomorrow's flying weather out here to the west. A lot of IFR here with the system moving along the Aleutians. All the way east by tomorrow morning to Atka Island. Still VFR for the Fox Islands up toward the Pribilofs, Alaska Peninsula, in a break here between the system here to the south and then the one coming across the northern Bering Sea, Chukchi Sea area. So big area of IFR with that coming eastward right into the Yukon and Kuskokwim Delta. Otherwise, marginal VFR North Slope Arctic coast and some IFR here from the Yukon Flats right on down into the Upper Tanana Valley, Fairbanks area, and Nenana, and then back along the western Alaska range, kind of just trailing down and becoming marginal along the Aleutian range there. VFR, South Central Alaska, Copper River Basin, and the North Gulf Coast, including Prince William Sound, Yakutat as well, and then areas of IFR, marginal VFR, and even some VFR there for the Panhandle. By the afternoon, that improves here, mostly VFR, Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay on down in toward Juneau. Otherwise, areas of marginal VFR elsewhere. good VFR, Kodiak Island, northeast Bristol Bay, King Salmon, right up into the Kuskokwim Valley there. Marginal VFR in the Kuskokwim Mountains, but good VFR now all the way up into the northeast interior. And then that band of IFR with the system pushing eastward there with the frontal system. Right on the back edge of that IFR zone into the northwest part of the state here, trailing back across the Yukon Delta and becoming VFR St. Lawrence Island behind the front. Huge area of IFR here, forecast for the southern Bering Sea and all of the Aleutians now. Better conditions, Alaska Peninsula in the southeast Bering Sea, but still some pretty good marginal VFR, Togiak, Kuskokwim Bay areas into Bristol Bay. And then for the Sunday morning time frame, that moisture moves into the central interior, hangs up along the western Alaska range, so it should stay VFR, maybe some marginal VFR into southern Cook Inlet and Shelikof Strait, but nothing too significant there. All the lower stuff staying west of the Alaska range, and then also another band hanging up on the Kuskokwim Mountains there. And then this area pushing eastward, breaking out a little bit behind the frontal boundary here for the west central Aleutians. Better conditions, northern Bering Sea, pretty good, nothing but VFR for Prince William Sound, Kenai Peninsula. Areas of marginal VFR over the Panhandle. Then for the afternoon, just a narrow band of IFR possibly lingering there along the areas of the central and eastern Alaska range. So marginal VFR, central interior, all the way up to the eastern north slope, western north slope, possible marginal, but really good VFR here, northern Bering Sea, Seward Peninsula, right in across southern Alaska, possible marginal VFR here around Yakutat to Cape St. Elias. And lower conditions, Lynn Canal Glacier Bay, otherwise southern Panhandle looking really good. And for the passes, Anatuvik, VFR becoming marginal, VFR for Adigan, Lake Clark and Merrill, maybe some marginal VFR early on in the day, but later in the morning becoming VFR through the afternoon. And that same forecast good for rainy. Windy, improving throughout the day, possible IFR in the morning, but VFR in the afternoon. Isabel, marginal VFR to start and VFR for the afternoon. Mentasta, IFR becoming marginal. Tanita, marginal VFR becoming VFR. Portage, same forecast, and for Chilkoot and White, IFR becoming marginal in the afternoon. Freezing levels at the surface here, northeast Bristol Bay, across southern Alaska, north of the Panhandle. Finally, some higher freezing levels showing up here out over the western Aleutians, anywhere from 2,000 to 6,000 feet. And for icing, with the system here moving across to the north, that'll bring areas of isolated moderate rime icing, Yukon Delta, into the western interior, back along the northwest part of the state, western Arctic coast, and otherwise pretty much icing free for the remainder of interior Alaska. And then the other system could be some areas of, again, isolated moderate rime icing with that, pushing in toward the Fox Islands late in the day and extending all the way back to Shimia and Attu. And then some mixed icing possible, kind of elevated thread here with the showery conditions for the southeast coast. Jet stream, west to northwest, 110 to 120 knots there from the right off the southwest coast to just south of Kodiak Island, 9,000 feet, west 55 knots with that low tracking east across the Chukchi Sea. Stronger winds out to the southwest there. And moving on to turbulence, moderate turbulence here, Kodiak Island and the western interior and the western.
Leatherbacks are the largest turtles on Earth, growing up to 7 feet long and weighing more than 2,000 pounds. These sea turtles are among the most highly migratory animals on Earth, some traveling up to 10,000 miles a year between their nesting and feeding grounds. Prevalent in every ocean except the Arctic and Antarctic, the species overall is declining, more so in the Pacific. In the eastern Pacific, the Mexican population was once thought to be the largest in the world and has experienced an alarming decline.
This trajectory of decline that we've seen and actually collapse, we're talking about only 20 or 30 turtles nesting every year, where thousands used to just 40 years ago. That's the kind of dramatic decline.
The western Pacific population has been declining steadily, and it's particularly critical to act now before it collapses, while there are enough turtles in nests to respond to conservation measures. But threats to all leatherbacks in the Pacific need to be addressed.
The top threats to populations are uncontrolled coastal development, all the bad stuff on the nesting beaches, egg harvest, poaching of the females, predation on the eggs by dogs and pigs. Deforestation makes the sand too warm and dry and the eggs don't hatch. Another one is incidental capture in fishing gear. During their vast migrations, they get caught in fishing gear throughout the Pacific. And finally, marine debris, which the leatherbacks mistake for their favorite food, jellyfish, and they choke on those.
Protecting leatherbacks in U.S. waters alone is not enough to ensure the continued existence of the species. The highly migratory nature of Pacific leatherbacks requires cooperation and international collaboration. NOAA is focusing on partnerships with Mexico, Central America, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, and the Solomon Islands in the Pacific.
Our action plan promotes a holistic recovery strategy that addresses all the sources of mortality. So that's basically ensuring that the remaining nesting sites are protected. The nests produce as many hatchlings as possible. And then secondly, in tandem with that, is reducing the fisheries-related mortalities. We're working with international partners to incentivize community participation on the nesting beach conservation and developing alternative livelihood programs that wean communities off leatherback resources and introduce alternative methods for food and income. Recovery is going to take a long time, on the order of 20 to 30 years at least, before we see some of these actions bear fruit. But here in the U.S., we can all help leatherbacks by making seafood choices, for instance, that support sustainable fishing practices. And beachgoers can certainly do their part by keeping our oceans clean of plastic debris, picking up marine litter, particularly plastic bags.
Together with our partners, we are strengthening protection and conservation efforts to ensure a future for leatherbacks, helping them to survive and once again thrive in the waters of the Pacific Ocean.
For 40 years, NOAA scientists have been collecting data and piecing together the story of the gray whale. Each year, new discoveries are made, revealing the secrets of this ancient traveler. With the northeastern Pacific population recovered, leading scientists from the NOAA Southwest Fisheries Science Center continue their research efforts to help save the western population from extinction. The most effective way to identify individuals and count the population is to photograph them from the surface. Using the gray whale's distinctive markings and gray spots caused by parasites on their skin, scientists document these characteristics to identify individuals.
So we're able to track migratory pathways and corridors by the simple use of photo identification. There are other ways to do that as well, biopsy sampling and genetics.
And from the air.
Aerial photography is one way you can study animals based on their size and shape. So you can learn a lot about nutritive and reproductive condition of whales just by measuring their size and shape from vertical aerial photographs.
You can also put satellite transmitters on them and track them remotely. You put the transmitter on and let them go, and you watch them move across the Pacific or down to China or wherever it might be.
To further learn and discover where these great sojourners swim, the team of researchers traveled to Russia and set up camp on Sakhalin Island.
The main focus of our research while we were on Sakhalin was to collect photo identification. If it was a whale that we had not collected a genetic sample from previously, we would also attempt to collect a sample from the whales.
Whereas whales are endowed with natural insulation, their human observers must gear up to brave the cold in order to study these marine giants up close.
We're typically only able to work about 1/3 of the time that we're there, and that's mostly due to this fog that just invades the area and sits sometimes for weeks on end. So it can be very challenging to try and do field work in this site.
Recently, 2 whales from the western population surprised scientists by migrating across the Pacific to the waters of California and Mexico.
It's a really fun finding. It's added another piece to the puzzle that we didn't previously know about. And I would have to say that it's opened up more questions than we had before.
Research scientists from Japan, Russia, and the United States share images of animals they've spotted.
We take a photograph of an individual off of Sakhalin Island, and we get a phone call from Japanese scientists, and they say, hey, guess what? We've got a picture of a gray whale in Japan. We say, can you send it to us? We'd love to try and match it. They'll send us the picture, we'll compare it to our catalog, and we'll say, hey, we've got a match from Sakhalin to Japan.
Unlike many species of whales that still remain on the endangered species list, the eastern Pacific gray whale, once on the brink of extinction, now numbers about 20,000 individuals. Recovery efforts that started 40 years ago and the ongoing research and monitoring by NOAA scientists have contributed to the conservation of the gray whales. Together, with legal protection and public education, scientists are playing their part to ensure the survival of this magnificent migratory animal.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Thank you for joining us on the marine portion of today's broadcast. First, we're going to be talking about today's sea ice edge. You can see we have widespread coverage of the sea ice still in the Chukchi as well as in the northern Bering. Meanwhile, as we go further south, again, multiple weeks of southerly flow and frontal systems moving across the Bering have reduced the sea ice edge and pushed it northwards, far north of St. Paul and St. George Island. Same story as we go into the Bristol Bay region. You can see a lot of sea ice has been eroded in that area. Let's take a look for your weekend marine forecast. Again, in interior areas of the Panhandle, you can expect winds to be fairly sheltered, but we're still going to be seeing 20-knot winds near Ketchikan. And we're also going to be seeing 4-foot waves. So again, as you go further south, be cautious in some of these channeled areas if you're going out in your boat this weekend. As we go out into the Gulf of Alaska, again, we have that low pressure system that's sitting in the Gulf there, bringing winds from the south, again, 20 knots in some areas, waves up to 10 feet as you get out of those sheltered areas along the Gulf of Alaska coast. As we go into Sunday, that low pressure system diminishes and we actually have a shift in the wind direction. We're seeing more of a northerly flow. We're seeing more about 7 to 8 feet in the Gulf of Alaska, but still 20 knots. As we go into the interior areas for Sunday, again, we're looking at 10 knots of wind and 2 feet in terms of waves. How about for your weekend out in the northern Gulf Coast? So you can see in Prince William Sound, we're looking at 20-knot winds and 4 feet. Again, northerly winds in the North Gulf Coast, we're looking at 25 knots as you get more into the Gulf of Alaska. Waves up to 6 feet. Again, we're still seeing some channeling occurring near north of Kodiak Island. We're seeing up to gale force, 40 knots winds, 35-knot winds, waves up to 11 feet. So if you're in Cook Inlet, be aware as you come out of Homer and go further south, you're going to run into some channeled wind areas. For Sunday, those channeled winds diminish, but we do see an increase in wave action in the Gulf of Alaska, and we're still hanging around 20 knots along the North Gulf Coast, and again 15 knots in Prince William Sound and 3-foot waves. In Cook Inlet, again 3 to 4 foot waves with winds up to 20 knots for your Sunday. For Saturday, as we move towards the Gulf of Alaska, or in the Alaska Peninsula, you can see we have winds about 15 to 20 knots, kind of in between low pressure systems there. But again, as you go more into the north, you're going to be running into some gale force winds. In the Bristol Bay area, we're looking at more 20-knot winds, 25 knots. For your Sunday, we see the wind direction shift. We're going to be seeing more of a southwesterly wind along the Alaska Peninsula, 25 knots, and waves 3 to 4 feet. As we go farther south here past, we're going to see 20-knot winds and 6-foot waves. Let's look at your Aleutian Island forecast. Again, we have that low pressure system near Shemya. So we're going to be seeing winds of 40 knots well into the gale range and waves up to 15 feet. So travel with caution if you're going to be out in the western and central Aleutian Islands on your Saturday. You know, it's a little slightly lower winds as we go further east and waves, but still 25 knots in some areas. Sunday, we're going to be seeing conditions improve slightly, but still up to 11 feet in some areas near the western and central Aleutians. And we're going to be seeing winds from 25 to 30 knots across the region. As we go up along your ice edge, we're going to be seeing winds that are 25 knots and waves that are 9 feet. And near St. Paul, St. George, we're going to be seeing winds of 15 knots, waves up to 4 feet. And in your ice areas, we're going to be seeing winds of about 25 knots. By Sunday, we're going to see a little shift, but we're still going to see winds about 30 knots, waves up to 9 feet along the ice edge. Now, as we go further north, you can see for your Saturday, again, we have that low pressure system and that cold air pooling in. So we're going to be seeing winds of up to 25 knots in mostly ice covered areas, but in a few places you might see 4-foot waves. Again, for your Sunday, 15 knots. We have that wind shift behind the front and winds up to 15 knots on the Arctic coast.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.